Okay, so in this video, a simple classroom management app in Excel, we're going to look at performing basic formatting, using relative cell addressing, using absolute cell addressing, creating simple formulae, and using predefined functions. So let's get started. We're going to use some sample data, and we have a worksheet called class marks with student names, mathematics, Spanish, English, history. We have a total column and a grade column. We also have information on each subject area. Right now, we're going to assume that each subject, the teacher is going to give 3 coursework exams, 20 marks each. And we're going to assume that the school requires the coursework marks to be worked out of 100%. Then there will be an end of term exam out of 100%, and the final average of the two of the coursework and end of term is going to be worked out. So bear in mind that this is just an example. Every school will have a different requirement for maintaining students' data. So let's begin with this subject, mathematics. In order to work out the coursework total, we'll click on this cell E4 and we'll place a formula in there. Now, in order to create a formula in Excel, we have to use the equal sign. So we type in the equal sign to tell Excel that we are going to use a formula. And in this case, the formula is going to be the sum of these 3 marks, whatever is in these columns here, the sum divided by 60. Right? So the sum of that divided by 60 multiplied by 100. So that's going to be the formula. So we'll use a predefined function called sum, and we can either type it in after the equal sign, sum, and from the time we start typing in, we see some predefined functions come up, and with that we use open bracket, and it gives us the opportunity to enter the range of numbers that's going to be added, and in this case it will be B4 to D4. So we'll select that, close bracket. Then we modify this predefined function to divide by 60, then multiplied by 100, and we hit enter. All right. Once that is done, we see the formula in the formula bar. We can now fill handle this all the way down to the last name. The other thing we have to work out is the final average, right? And once an exam mark is placed in here, we're going to find the average of the two. So we can create this formula now. Again, we use the equal sign, and we can use a predefined function called average, and we can find those predefined functions even if we don't type it in here. We can click here and we'll see some of the most commonly used predefined functions, and average is one of them. So we can click on average, and you'll see the structure of it is here, right? And it's already highlighted, right? So we simply use this predefined function and fill handle it all the way down. Right, so once that is done, we have created a framework for each subject area. So we can now copy this worksheet for each subject area that we have listed, and we could check back and we have Spanish, English, and history. So we make a copy of this for Spanish, history, English, and history. Okay, so we'll right click on the worksheet, click move or copy. We'll click create a copy and move to end. So now it's math 2, so we can rename this. Right click, rename, call this English. Actually, I think it's Spanish. And so therefore we'll rename the title. Just double click, call it Spanish. And by the way, to get this title in the middle like this, we use what is called a merge and center. So if we click it, this is how it originally looked. Then we select all the columns in the table and select merge and center. Now we could copy Spanish and rename English. And again, rename this. Then we copy again. And now we call this one history. Oops, okay, history is a reserved name, so we'll have to rename this, call it hist. Okay, so now all that is left to do is to actually put in marks in the table to be able to work out total and final average. So I'll pause here, and if those of you who are following me can populate the tables with some actual marks. So I'll pause and I'll come back with when the tables are populated, and we'll continue. As you can see, I have not only populated the tables, but I've added a bit of formatting as well. So I'll just briefly show you how to add this formatting to the table. I'll use merge and center and add a fill, add bold, change font size, as well as highlight the total columns. Okay, all right. Actually, okay, great. So that's how we add a bit of formatting into the table so it will look nice. All right, so let's go back to the class marks table. Right, we have transferred marks from the different subject areas into the table. Now we are going to work on a formula to calculate grade. So the first thing you need to do is create a grading scheme. So we'll go to the right of the table and create a grading scheme and a new table. Right. And we'll assign different marks for different grades. For example, we'll say an 80 will be A, 80 and above, 70, B plus, 60, B, 50, C, 40, D, and 30, E. Right, so the next thing is to sort the table, sort this grading scheme in ascending order. So to do that, you highlight sort and filter, and sort from smallest to largest. Okay, and you can add some formatting to it, and like all borders, merge and center, highlight. Okay, great. So now what we are going to use is the Vlookup predefined function to calculate the grade. So we'll go on grade, and as usual, equal sign V lookup, open bracket. Now with the VLOOKUP, we have to identify the column in which the predefined function is going to look up the values for. So in this case, it would be the G column. So we'll start with G3, which is the first average, comma. Then we have to establish the range of values which the VLOOKUP is going to use, and that is the grading scheme. So the range will be K3 all the way down to L8. So we simply highlight that. So we have K3 to L8. Then we use the F4 function to make it absolute. And I'll explain absolute addressing shortly. Then another comma, and then we give the number of the column in which the value is going to be placed, and in this case it will be at the immediate right of the G3 column. So G3 column would have been the column 1 in this scenario here, so we just put number 2 and enter. And as we can see, it applied the grade C for 55. Okay, so we simply now use relative cell addressing, as I mentioned before, with the fill handle, and fill handle the data downwards. And through relative addressing, it applies the appropriate grade to each subsequent grade. And if you look at if you look at H4, for example, we'll see the corresponding G4, and H5 goes to G5. But if we look at the grading scheme and you look at what it is, if you start with C, you'll see it's still K3 to L8. Even if you go all the way down, it's still K3 to L8. So what that does is it locks it in to this particular area. So even though we use relative addressing, these are locked in, and that locking in is what is called absolute cell addressing. And if we remove those dollar signs from the range, we'll end up with relative addressing. So therefore it will go past this L8 and go all the way down. Okay, so and we don't want that. So that is relative addressing as opposed to absolute cell addressing. All right. So there's another way that you can calculate grade, and I'll demonstrate that as well. Right, and we'll try and see if we can get the same result. And this is using the if function. So again, equal sign, and we use the if predefined function, open bracket. And notice all functions or formulae operate very similarly. And we say if G3 is greater than or equal to right. Well, in this case, we don't necessarily need to, we can use the value from here, or we can simply type in 80, right? So we say if G3 is greater than or equal to 80, then comma sign, then we apply the grade A. and we put that in quotation marks, double quotation marks. Then we use another comma to continue, right? So this is like an else, so it's an if then else statement. So we say if G3 is greater than or equal to 80, then apply A, else, and we repeat if, open bracket, again G3 is greater than or equal to 70. Right? So you see a pattern developing here. Then apply B plus, else, if again. So this is now called a nested if statement. If G3 is greater than or equal to 60, then apply B, else if G3 and notice it's not case sensitive. G3 is greater than or equal to 80, 50. Then apply C, else if G3 is greater than or equal to 40, then apply D, else, and you do repeat if again because this is the last condition here, so we just simply say else E. Right, then we close bracket, and if you notice you'll get color coding to help you determine how many closed brackets you need to have. Green, purple, I guess that's what, red, and then black, and then we hit enter. Right, so once we enter that formula, we'll use relative cell addressing again, fill handle, and right, so we supposed to get basically the same results, right? However, in this case we got B, we got a B here, right? And that is probably because this figure is not actually 70, it's 69.7, okay? And because we rounded it, it is based on this formula here, less than. So in order to correct this error, we simply have to go to the figures here and probably use 79.5, right, and 69.5, then 59.5. So we roll everything back by 0.5, 49.5, and 39.5, right? And now we'll get the same, right? So, oh, I'm sorry, I rolled it back the wrong way, right? So so this is how you could, so these are two ways, right? So you can use the if function or you can use the vlookup, but like I say, the if function will be more, if you round your figures off, you will get a little error and you have to roll back the numbers in order to correct those errors. So that's it, right? So this is a simple Excel application for classroom management to work out grades, to manage your students' data. The only thing we have now to do is to generate some graphs to visually represent this data. So we're going to do that next. Okay, so now we are going to include a couple of graphs to visually enhance your data so that you can show it to parents and so forth. All right, so we'll go on insert. We'll use column graphs and we'll use a simple 2D clustered column graph. Right? So right now the graph is blank, so we go to select data, and this graph we would like to show student or student overall performance. So we want to compare each student's overall performance. So we'll click add and we'll call it overall student performance. All right, and the values that we're going to use for that, click in here, and we are going to use the averages. Right, so we select that range, right, click OK, right, and now we have a graph that shows overall student performance. Now we want to add a little few elements to the graph, right? So we can add axis titles, right? So we can call these student names, right? Okay, we already have this here. This one we can call this percentages. Right, if we notice, we have the student names are 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9, so we can go back into select data, we edit this, and the label range, right, we will click there to select the label range, which will be these here. Right, so now we have a graph that shows each one of the names and their performance in percentages. All right, and in design we can select different design styles, right? Whichever one you find looks, nice. Okay, this one lacks the axes, right? Right, so whichever one you decide you can choose. All right, so we can settle on this. Yeah. All right, great. So in addition to that, we can do another graph where we compare students' performance by subject area. So we can use the same clustered graph, right, either 2D or 3D, right? And again, we select data. Now in this case, we can select the data range because we want to select almost everything in the table. So we click here and we select student names up to um, right. So we exclude total and average from this table. All right. Right, and again we can simply add or change the title to say student subject comparison. Okay, so it shows a graphical representation of how each student performed in each subject area. Right. Okay, great. So that basically sums up this tutorial on creating a simple classroom management app in Excel, and I stressed it was simple. So there are many more advanced things that you can do. You can modify this and add in more complexity as you go along. So I hope this video was helpful, and right, please feel free to comment. Right, you can check my link below for my blog. You could put comments there, or you can comment directly on the video, or um, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you.